So again, welcome everybody. I think for those couple people who came in a little later, I just need to get your driver's license before we leave and just to get a quick copy and just make sure everybody is signed in. That would be great. So let's see, it's already 10:10. We'll cruise through this. Just so that you know, at probably in an hour or so, we just have some to-go lunches coming in, some wraps and such, so you can snag one of those to go. We like to feed our volunteers. Let's see, so important upcoming dates. Today is already the 19th of January. Obviously, these rooms are already set up. This room is going to be filled with tax preparers this year. This room right here is going to be intake. For right now, we are not doing in person. We're doing drop-offs, but not, the preparers are not actually sitting with the clients yet. I mean, that might change. We'll probably, rethink the whole thing, talk about it in mid to late February, but for right now, it's kind of a virtual process, just so that you're aware. So it doesn't really change your role too much, but intake, you'll still be accepting taxes, and it's going to be by appointment. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's not as if this room, at least at the beginning, will have twice as many people in it. It will just be the tax preparers for now. This bathroom, all three of these rooms are VITA. So this bathroom is where Bill will sit. It's where the packets are made. A lot of clerical magic happens back there. Jim, who some of you may meet at some point, he's an afternoon guy, but he's also one of our lead tax preparers. So, but there'll be a lot of different faces coming through, tax preparers who, I think we have probably 5 or 6 new folks this year.
About 35.
Yeah, so we have about 35 tax preparers now, just at this location. And we also have Carolina Beach is one of our other sites. I think that there are probably, there are 10 now down at Carolina Beach. And again, Carolyn and Patty will be down helping with intake and probably whatever they need. But important dates. So as of Monday, 5 days from now, we will have packets, those packets that I've given you kind of a sample. Those will be out front of the building. And as of Tuesday, the 25th of January, that is when the appointment line will open up, and we'll have a chat about this for our phone folks. So just so that you know, all of you are on what we call intake for the VITA tax program, except Elmer, Kathy, and Sandra with the bright mask back there. They are going to be making the phone calls for appointments. So that is also a very important role. I thought this year it would be a good idea just to bring everybody together so that you, like I said in the email, can get the full picture. Some of this might not apply to the 3 of you as much. Hi. Arthur. Okay. Let me give you a, maybe might just need to. Thank you. I haven't seen you in a while. Okay. And this is Arthur, great last name, Doherty. Arthur is also new to the program. Arthur, do you just want to say hello? Is there a chair back there for you?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Okay.
I thought it was 10:30.
That's okay. We're glad you're here. Arthur, I'm Becky, by the way. We've had, it's been a while, quite a few months, so I'm glad that you're here. Oh, perfect. That's great. Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, so starting on Tuesday of next week, we're going to start setting the appointments. And there is an option, and probably might just show you quickly, but there's going to be an option this year. People can either call in as they did last year in the extended summer before to make their appointment, or they can now get online and just do the online appointment calendar. Spread this like wildfire, because I think that it's going to make it so much more streamlined for people. Of course, we love to speak with our volunteers on the phone, but hopefully this will cut down on some of the phone calls. The first couple of weeks, I was dragging these guys in for extra hours because Angelithia did phone calls last year as well. There were days that we were getting 90 or 100 phone calls, and we were just trying to keep up. So, and we did. We found a way through it, but hopefully, we're kind of thinking ahead and trying to plan even more this year. The first day of doors actually opening and bringing in clients is going to be Monday, January 31st. Okay. And I don't mean to bog you down with extra notes, but this is just a 2-pager that I sent to all of the staff in this building, just so that they have kind of a glimpse of the program. Maybe if you guys don't mind passing this around as well, just so that you have it. And everything you have, you can take home and kind of look it over the next week or two. That would be really helpful. So yes, open for business Monday, January 31st. If you then look at your schedule, so that Monday will be the first day, obviously. With that vote. Hi, Kelly. For those who just came in the last few minutes, this is Kelly Shelton. And Kelly started just a year ago and is my manager. And you're going to see us a lot as well. Kelly will be down here more on Tuesday and Thursday, but I think that's kind of the plan. I'll be here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Bridget will be here more Tuesday, Thursday. But we're actually hoping to be down here a lot less than we were last year because we have just more volunteers, honestly, this year. And kind of the plan and hope, but we'll see how everything goes. We'll always be able to get in touch with one of us. But we also have, of course, our team of tax preparers that are always go-tos. So the current plan is, we just decided this last week. Originally, the thought was to do a hybrid program where people could come in and they'd either choose to drop off their taxes, just like last year, leave. They're here hopefully for just a very short amount of time. We make sure that we have all the materials that we need. And then they leave and they'll get a phone call from their tax preparer and then they'll come back. The other option was to do in person, where people will come, they may wait for 6 hours, but they'll actually be able to sit down with somebody, do their taxes, leave, and have everything done in that day. We decided in the last week that we're going to just for now, because of COVID numbers, stick with the virtual, which is what we did last year. And I have to say, I know that there are those people who, and even tax preparers who really, love that, sitting face to face, and for some people, especially maybe if they're hard of hearing, that makes a lot of sense. But I had so many people say to me over the last year, really after the tax season, including some of our volunteers, keep it this way. We like not having to sit in the waiting room for hours, not knowing how long it will be. So mixed feelings about that, but at least for the first month anyway, we're just going to be doing the drop off, phone call, come back and pick up your taxes and sign. You guys know how to do that. So, and then again, we'll revisit if we decide to offer in person moving into March. We'll have to revisit the calendar, the schedule, because we'll probably have to add some volunteers for afternoons and such. Let's see.
We'll also probably do another training session if we go face to face, because
Right.
it's a different process than what we're going to talk about today. So we're not going to talk about any of that stuff today. We'll save it for a later session.
Yeah, exactly. Just especially for the new people, there are many familiar faces who will come through that door. I would say, I think that we talked about it, maybe between 75 and 80% of our clients are repeat clients. Did you say that's about right?
That's pretty good guess.
Yeah. So a lot of them know the routine from last year. They already know. I've already probably had just in the last few days, 5 or 10 phone calls. Oh, are the packets out yet? So they know. This makes me really happy. They know what the process is. Getting calls early, I praise them for that. It's smart to get in early. But basically, the process. So just so that I'm going to back up a little bit. Schedules. You all have a schedule. This is already, I was saying to Mary and Joan, I have to talk to you because I think we might switch it slightly if you're okay with this. Let's talk after. But this, as of right now, is pretty close to the schedule that we have. To come in at 8:30, and you actually will be going into this room. But in here, we'll have coffee and snacks and that sort of thing. And please help yourself. Once the tax preparers are up and running, they usually come in a little bit later. But obviously, we want to keep our voices down just because they're going to be on the phones and, focusing and that sort of thing. But just know that, even for today, also, if anybody's thirsty, there are some drinks in this little fridge. We try to keep that stocked. But please help yourself, to any of the refreshments once the season is up and running. But we say to come in at 8:30. We hope that everything will be set up, by 8:30. We have one more team member that we're looking for, but we'll see what happens. But there is a chance that, if you were to come in at 8:30 and nothing's set up, feel free to, set everything up and we'll put chairs outside. And sometimes that happens that we're running around and, the morning gets away from us. So we really want to set up chairs and a little table outside and make sure there should be copies of everything, but just make sure that everything is kind of welcoming and ready to go. 9 o'clock is the first time block. So, so just going back to the schedule, many of you have already emailed me of days you know you can't be here, or you know that the season kind of needs to come. I think that you said you're good through March. So we'll, you know, if you have anything that comes up, doctor's appointments, just let me know. If you're not feeling well, you will find we're backups, but Bridget could also be a backup, but you know, that's why we actually, it would be great if you have flexibility in your life and we can call on you if we learn that Mary's not feeling well and knows that she can't make it on Wednesday. We can, you know, call somebody. The more notice you can give us, but we know that sometimes you wake up and you're not feeling well, so call us. Okay, Sandra.
Not feeling well, and we want to let you know, do you prefer email, text, or phone call?
What do you prefer, Kelly? Email?
Yeah, I think an email, if you have the ability to send an email, that might be most efficient, because then we can see that at all different times. You know, sometimes the voicemail takes a delay to, can you get it to our phones and things. So
Yeah.
email would be preferred, but if you don't have access or it's not convenient, you're not feeling well with type, just give us a call.
And you know what I'll do is I'm going to email all of you with both of our emails so that, you know, you can just send it to both of us just in case, cover all the bases. Is everybody okay with email? Okay. I don't write it down. So yes, with this schedule, like I said, it's for now kind of set, but minus that one little change. But if you're willing to be a sub, if you have flexibility, talk to me, because we are definitely going to be looking for a sub list. I know that, you know, Mary, you might be able to fill in later on Friday if need be, but and Doris, I know that you said you're pretty much our queen sub for this season, so I don't have you on the schedule, but Doris is ready, you know, to come in if need be. So it would be really great if I had a list of people, like I said. If you can't make it, you already know, but if you're one of those people, you're up early anyway, and you know, we're desperate and you can make it in, let me know. And if you also, I'm thinking of setting up like a text distribution list so that we can, I'll also send an email about that later, but think it out. And if you're willing to be on this sub list, let me know. Just wait for an email from me, but I'll follow up on that. So that's kind of the schedule. And let's see, 8:30 to 12:30, 9 to 11 are the appointments, 9 to 9:30, 9:30 to 10, 10 to 10:30, and 10:30 to 11. Each of those half-hour time blocks, we try to make it nice and clean Monday through Friday. Each of those half-hour time blocks, basically, if you go online, there are 10 slots per half hour. No more than 10 people, but it's to spread people out. So we'll have 40 people each morning. Does that make sense? Okay, that's at the most. There may be days that there's only 8 people in this time slot, but the hope is to have exactly 10 and that they all show up. Okay.
That number may change during the season, but
Okay.
that's the starting point.
That's the starting point. And yeah,
Becky, do you
appointments are necessary.
want me to show that? Just so
Sure.
everybody can see that too.
Yep, we've been working on this online calendar as an option, but people can always still just call in.
So this is what it's gonna look like. We can dim the lights for a minute just so you can see. Basically, it's going to just look such as this. It's not fancy. It's just Microsoft booking calendar appointment. So you can see that they know they're in the right place and they can see that there's a calendar. They can go into the future and they can schedule their appointment into March if they would like to. And then since we're on today and it's after 10 o'clock, you can see there's only 2 options available. But just as Becky had said, the time frame is from 9 until 11 in those half-hour blocks. So what they would do is they would then not necessarily have to log in. You just actually type in your information like an online form. So first, last name, we do require them to provide us an email because that's how we can send them reminders, 3 days in advance, 1 day in advance, the day of the appointment, don't forget. So those types of reminders we can send to them. They really can't communicate with us through the system. It's more just like when you make an appointment for your oil change or to go get your haircut. you can make an appointment and you can cancel it. So it's giving them some friendly user, capabilities. And then from a manual standpoint, we can go in the back end and move things around if we need to. But it's very straightforward. So again, once they see the date that they're thinking, and let's say, hey, you know what? They want to come in on Monday, the 31st. There they are, 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30. And so if they select one of the times, then they go down here and they enter their information. And then basically the other thing that this allows us to provide are the simple 20 questions. Did you know you need to bring a driver's license? Have you ever thought that you should have your social security card with you when you come to do your taxes? So we basically have like the 20 questions that they have to just acknowledge. They just say, yes, I'm aware, I'm going to be prepared. So it's one less thing we have to try to hopefully, deal with once they've arrived at our step. But once they've gone through all of that, then basically they hit book and then they get an email confirmation and it goes from there. So we're hopeful that this can be a tool for those who have internet access, who have a computer. We can, again, use this system when we're taking phone calls from an administrative side, but we know it's not going to be capable for everybody. So this was just one tool that we introduced this year, and we're going to work with that. But Becky, I know we'll talk more about the telephone appointment time as well.
Yes.
I'm going to turn the lights on just so I can see hands. But any questions about that process? Yeah, Kathy.
I help.
Uh-huh.
If someone just called in and booked them an appointment on Monday of one day at 9 o'clock, and we're on the phone making appointments, and I happen to have just made one at 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
We
great
do
question.
10, that's right, we do 10.
And we're gonna touch on that,
Okay.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Just so that you see the whole thing. But yes, 9 to 11. And then from 11 till noon time, that hour, as you'll see, you're on the schedule till 12:30. 12:30 is a buffer. I hope that you're out here by, 12:04. But 11 to 12 o'clock again will be the pickup time. People to come back and pick up their taxes when they're told.
Becky, we have one more question.
Yes,
Sarah?
Sarah.
That's really my question too, as a phone appointment person. Am I supposed to key in the appointments I make on the phone?
Okay, so-
into that schedule? How are we gonna keep, 9 to 10 from getting to be that
Okay,
big?
so yes, thank you, Sandra. For the phone folks, just the three of you, but also it's just good for everybody to know. So our plan right now is to reserve five slots per half hour for the phone folks.
Mhm.
Okay, we're gonna see how this goes and see. It's hard to say, are 50% of the people gonna get online? At first, it might only be 20%. We just don't know. But we're going to reserve at least 5 slots. So you're gonna have a calendar that you're gonna be able to refer to so that you know each morning what is available. Okay, for the next few weeks. Mary.
On the did you know section, are we going to bring a passport or license for
Okay, so
everybody?
we're gonna touch on that. Yes,
Mhm.
I probably should get moving along here, so we're not here till 1 o'clock, but yes, for the phone folks, and we'll explain this, but you're still going to write the message in the old message book, right? Just while I have you here, I'm gonna give you, this is the script. It's been updated since last year. So when the plan is, and we're still ironing it out, but we're going to reserve spots for those people who are calling in, because we know not everybody has access to the internet. And we don't want those poor people to have to wait till April to get in for their taxes. So we've reserved so many spaces in each half hour for people who are calling in so that Kathy and Elmer and Sandra can plug them in. And then on the back side, we'll enter them into the calendar later in the day after you leave. Okay, so and then each morning we print off this nice schedule for the person who is on intake on a nice clipboard, just like last year. And as people show up, that's when we ask them, okay, you've got an appointment, and they'll be on the sheet. And if they come in at 9 o'clock and their appointment's not till 10:30, we ask them to wait in their vehicle, unless there's absolutely no line, but we'll also touch on that. So Kathy, when you come in for your first shift next week, we'll also go through everything. Okay, but it's a little bit different. It might take a little bit of ironing out. But really, your roles are the same as they were last year. I gave you the script. The more information I would say that you can offer to each client, it's worth taking the time. And I hope that you don't have that same list of, each morning kind of an overwhelming list, because many of them will get online. And you're even going to have the opportunity, and this is on what I just gave you, to say to them, every once in a while, you get a call of somebody who's like, I just want to know the process. I'm not ready to even book an appointment yet. And that's where you can say, well, when you are ready, this is a great option. You don't even need to call back, just get online, you'll get a confirmation. It's so streamlined if they're willing to get online. But the big thing with our phone team is that, and that you won't see them as often, but because there's an office, you'll still be in the Ocean Breeze room behind the library. But and you'll be calling from a landline. You'll be happy to know that, so that there's a callback number coming up with caller ID. But and an ability to leave messages and such. But our phone team is incredibly important because they are relaying all of that information. You need to come pick up a packet. So the people aren't just showing up at the door, with a couple of tax documents. They need to have an appointment, show up, have picked up their packet ahead of time, filled everything out, make sure we have, and we're going to go through all of this, driver's license, social security for everybody. So their role really is a huge piece of this puzzle. Really just to relay all of the good information to the clients. Let's see, so that's appointments. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Are there any questions about that? Like I said, once you come in next week, so Kathy, Elmer, and Sandra, if you can start next week, that's great.
Bridget has a question.
So I see on the paper you gave us in blue, it has the address that they go online. Where is that actually located on our site?
It's not there.
Yeah, it's gonna, I know it's dark. Basically, if they go to, thanks, Bill. If you went to the Senior Resource Center website and they were to search for services, then underneath this is where the VITA tax program is. Or some people might use this search engine and hit VITA, and then it would pull up the web page. So here's the tax information. And so basically then this is where it will live, right here on our tax page. And then there'll be a button and a hyperlink, and then that will access to the online calendar as well.
Okay.
So we did not give them the specific page where you can see it says like /VITA tax information. Because in case that were ever to change in the next 4 months, then all of a sudden all what we've sent out there is neglected. So what we wanted to do instead was just say, go to our Senior Resource Center website. If you're using computers and emails, you can search, or you can go to the services that we offer and locate that as well. So thanks, Bridget, for that question. Go
Normally
ahead.
on the website, it has it changes in terms of
Yep.
things that are happening at the senior center.
Yes, that's right. So like what
It's not
Bill's
gonna be
saying
one
is,
of those?
yeah, what Bill's asking about is like this rotating slide that's on the front of the website. And so that's definitely a great suggestion, Bill. We're talking to the team who's helping us make the edits to the website. Becky and I we don't have the responsibilities to do that. So we have to send it to another. But yes, that they're hopeful to make it more complete for us. And then when the press releases go out from the county, that communication would be present there as well. But yes, thank you, Bill. And definitely, as we get into this, if you notice things or say, hey, as a user, when I've done appointments, this has been helpful. We want to make improvements to this over time. We're just getting started with it now.
Yeah, we really, big picture is that we're fairly new to this, and we're just looking at the big picture in the long run. What can we do to help streamline this whole process and make it easier on all of us? Work smarter, not harder, right? So we're getting there. But if you notice anything throughout the season, this is just a general statement, whether it's an intake or outside traffic flow on the phones, if there's anything that is puzzling or that you feel like could be improved or that you have concerns about, just come to us. And we will address it. It might take a little bit of time, but there are some things that are just out of our control. But if there are things that we can do to improve the program, we want to do that. So going back to appointments, whether it's on the phone or online, for the folks who book their appointments online, little messages. We just hope that the same information is conveyed, whether it's over the phone or online. If you're sick, cancel your appointment. You can reschedule. And the nice thing is that the online calendar just does it automatically. They get a cancellation, just like, doctor's appointment. So same thing, we'll encourage them to call us, things come up last minute. Moving to the drop-off process. So typically, as you'll see on the calendar, there are 4 people on each shift. It is important that we have 4 people on each shift. Again, we know last minute things come up. We understand, just communicate with us, as quickly as you can. Holly and I are constantly checking email and voicemail. So starting very early in the morning. Let's see, drop-off process. So 4 people. I envision, I know that typically it was at the beginning of the season last year, we had 2 people in the hallway last year, but 2 people on intake. One person was outside greeting people and another was kind of a runner, making copies and that sort of thing. I think it's kind of a roll with it type of situation. We might find that it works better depending even on the team that's there that day. Some people are like fast movers, they can be outside and inside and bouncing around a lot, and that's okay. There are some people that may prefer to not be outside for whatever reason, on your feet or whatever, and that's perfectly fine. We just need to communicate with the team. 3 hours sitting at a table can be a lot for some people, and sometimes you need to use the restroom. I think just remember, you're all part of the team and just communicate to each other. I'm gonna, pop out, I'll be right back, and it all works out. But if we do find that it's just kind of a very busy morning and they're kind of a backup, and that does happen, we might have 2 people outside and, just trying to figure that out. We'll kind of roll with it, but just know you might be 1 minute doing intake and then realize we might need to move you outside or something like that. So I would say always dress for the weather and wear good shoes. Comfort is key. So there's a cabinet in this room, just so that if you bring person or cell phone, that sort of thing, you can just, that room is a nice safe room when we're not in and it's locked. Like I said, snack station. There's going to be a sign-in sheet similar to what you all signed. I need you to sign that every day, maybe on your way out. You'll have a separate one in your office, but Joan Kohler, and I didn't do a sign-in, sign-out times because that, stuff is really silly. Just write 3 hours, 15 minutes, just to the 15-minute increment. Okay, that would be a huge help. We do for our program, it's grant funded, and we have to record all the hours and that our volunteers are here, so it really is very helpful. Also, you're all going to get, I've already been working on a little badge that you're going to wear today. We'll have like a coat rack that all the badges are hanging on. Some people prefer just to keep them with the badge with them, wear it each time you come in, whatever works for you. But you do need to be wearing a badge anytime that you're volunteering here. Okay, and that parking.
You skip that one.
Oh, Schneggis, thanks. Yes, when you first get here, parking. The plan is to drive. Everybody's going to be parking out in this back parking lot this year. Okay. Now that last year was weird because we weren't open. The senior center wasn't open, so there was plenty of parking. But yes, park out back. And you can come right up into this door. I don't think that these doors are usually open, but that side door will be open. In this room, you can just come right in there and grab a cup of coffee, go in here, sign. You probably won't sign that form until you leave. You know how many hours you put in. But yes, parking for VITA clients. Okay, I have this on the list. I don't think that we're going to be designated parking spots for clients just because it's so tricky with all the senior center, but we're doing their taxes for free if they have to walk for a ways. Let's see. So there'll be during each shift, and typically we figured it out that morning, but I think, you can kind of talk amongst yourselves, like Joan, you always do intake sitting at a table. But if there's somebody that morning that's willing to be outside for the first part of it, and then after an hour and a half, if you're sick of it, you can switch off. Mary's, great outside. Basically, the person outside is greeting the clients as they arrive. I can tell you the first appointment's 9 to 9:30. There will be people some mornings lined up at 8:15 before you even get there. And I think it's important just to communicate with them. We have you on our list for 9 o'clock. So if you want to wait in your car and come back, or if you want to sit, in this 29-degree weather, that's fine. It's your choice. But but they are outside. The doors don't open until 9 o'clock. So
Why, if they're out there at 8:30, before the doors open, yes, why can't we just
Judgment,
take them
judgment call. I think personally,
instead of them waiting around until 9?
personally, I would do that. If you're comfortable, you're set up, you feel like you're ready to go. I think it's fine to bring planning, especially if there are a couple of you here, but I do think it's important to always have somebody, there's only one person here first thing, and it's important to have somebody at the door, keeping an eye on the door as well. You know, rather than just going in here with a client. I would wait until there's at least a couple people. But that's really a judgment thing. The other judgment thing is you're gonna have some people who come really early, you know, and there happens to be no line because the clients that we had were super easy and judgment call. If you want to just let this person in and do their, you know, get them through intake, I think it's fine. As long as they're not like cutting the line, you know, it's not blatant. But I would say however best we can move people along. Okay,
But I would say that for the outside people, if you've got a line out there, a long line, make sure that the people at the front of the line are the right people. So if
yes,
it's 9 o'clock and there's a line of 20 people and half of them are 10 o'clock people, move them to the back of the line. Put the
Exactly.
9 o'clock people first.
and we do that all the time. We say you have your appointment, but it's not until the 10 to 10:30 block. So if you would just go to the back of the line or come back at 10 o'clock, you know, we'll get you in. We're trying to be as fair as possible.
Becky, we have two
Yeah.
questions. Go ahead.
Okay, you said that you can take somebody early. That's a judgment call. Before you take somebody early, would you let the other workers that you're working with, that you're taking that person early, so they won't say like, who is this?
Yes, I think communication is very important. And this is really, I would only take somebody early, especially if it's before the 9 o'clock block. If you're completely set up and ready to go, and you're just sitting here twiddling your thumbs.
You're all ready.
You're all
So
ready.
all of you sit there and say, let's go ahead and open the door. Let's go.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
get.
It's not
just
a
to get
one-off
ahead
thing.
of it.
It's not, okay,
Yeah.
we're just ready to open then. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
And I think that, yeah, it's just a communication within the 4-person team. Just to say, okay, we're ready, we're good to go. Doris,
Yeah, I have a question. Is it possible, and this could be against everything, the people who are taking the reservations, you know, ask the people if they're handicapped, that's the worst mess.
that is
Is when you get handicapped people, they can't get out of the car, they're sitting out there, the driver is all upset. People are telling him to move, and
yeah,
I just wondered if there was a way the people who's making the reservation could say, I don't know how to put this.
yeah, we
but,
don't
you
want
know,
them to think we offer we'll come to your car, you know, for the service and make it really easy. It's not, I mean, some people still think, especially for those who are new to the program, they think it's like literally a drive up, drop off, like you're at McDonald's or something, but the opposite. You know, but there are those cases, and usually they'll mention it to the folks on the phone, and we'll have a little note section.
Yep, and they
You could
can,
add this, but I
they
don't
can
want to
enter a note.
promote it.
they can enter notes in there as they make that. So like any accommodations necessary, you know, I'm
Yes.
deaf and hard of hearing, you know, I have a mobility issue. You know, I'm gonna be coming with a caretaker or a care provider, or, you know, I have the situation where I need this assistance or that. But yeah, that's a good point, Doris, for us to all be aware of that. And then as a team, as Bill mentioned, we communicate as a team, because there are gonna be occasions where you're like, oh, we do need to go help or provide additional assistance to an individual. Bridget, did you have your hand up?
Are you gonna explain in your information that people will be waiting outside? I mean, are you letting people know that this is a line outside?
Yeah, we had done that last year as well, and we made that telephone call, and we were reminding folks that that is the case. And then in the literature as well, we can re-emphasize that. It's a good reminder
That's a good
for
call, Bridget.
the website too, because as people are reading that information to, you know, dress for the weather, be prepared, you'll be staying outside. Stephanie?
Just to go back to what you were saying, on the website, you're not providing that question about whether or not you have difficulty with mobility or not. You want to make a note, wouldn't it just make better sense? Because some people may not even think about that, and they're still handicapped. Wouldn't it just jar someone's memory to ask that question, and then they can check it off and move forward, just in case it doesn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I was.
No, it's a good point, and I think we should be able to do that, like where we have those 20 questions, and one of those questions could be, you know, do you have any additional needs that we need to be made aware of, mobility, you know, absolutely, we can certainly add that stuff. Thank you, Sandra.
You said a long time ago that about 75% of our people are recurrent customers. And so last year on the phone, a lot of people would say, what door am I supposed to come in this year? So that would be a really good thing to have as your 21st question.
That's in your packet.
Come to the door that has the sign or that sort of thing. Because a lot of them, you know, we've changed this building around every single year we've done that. We put people in different places. So
Yeah, I'll make a note too.
That's
we
a good
can-
point. It is in your packet.
The internet appointment.
Right.
What about the folks that show up without an appointment?
Great. Okay. That's a good point. First of all, every single person has to have their packet filled out. Inside that packet, we tell them on the phone, online, pick up a packet at the senior center. It's a newspaper rack. It doesn't have to be during business hours. It's outside, but you have to complete a packet. So if somebody walks up and says, I have an appointment, but they haven't even picked up their packet, there's a pretty good chance they don't really have an appointment. And the first thing we just tell them is to go grab a packet. We're gonna have little, we didn't mention this too, I don't think, but we're gonna have little business cards, VITA business cards this year that have our appointment phone number and the online calendar address for those people. And it does happen, you know, where they think it's like it was pre-COVID and that you didn't need an appointment. And that, you know, in their defense, that's how it was. So, but then we can say, you know, the way it works now is that you pick up a packet, and these people get, I would say on average, like maybe one a day. So really, they don't know how it works. They didn't call. So then we just show them where the packets are, hand them a card, make an appointment, and come back. Carolyn, it is a case where they have their packet all filled out. And I just also want to say glitches, strange things do happen. There's always a chance that somebody truly did have an appointment, human error. I mean, I don't make mistakes, but, you know, I definitely do on occasion. And, you know, say that I just somehow missed a name to put in. If there's no line out there, or they have their packet completely ready to go, and you feel like we can squeeze them in, again, judgment call, would never encourage this. But in a lot of cases, you know they're not lying. You just, I mean, I know it's a tricky thing, but these are so few and far between. But if there is somebody who, or they show up and for some freaky reason, there's absolutely nobody outside. That does happen where our intake group is like just so efficient, and the taxes that morning were just really, really easy. Somebody could show up, there's no line, bring them on in. Let's get their taxes sorted. Yeah.
People who want to have their taxes done at Carolina Beach, is there a place to pick up their packet? at Carolina?
They need to pick up their packet at Carolina Beach because it's a little, last year it was a little bit different, the packet down there. Yeah, and, you know, usually people will mention it beforehand on the phone, and Elmer and Kathy and Sandra can give out information to Carolina Beach. Here's the phone number. They have much more limited hours down there. It's 6 days a week. The nice thing is that they're going to do Saturday morning just for an hour, but it's like 1 hour per day for drop-offs and no appointments. So it is, it's a little tricky down there. Bridget.
Sorry, I
No.
just keep thinking.
No, this is good. This is
why you're
exactly
here.
why we're doing this. And this is why it's so good that we are doing it all in one day, because last year we did several trainings and there were different questions on different days, so everybody's here.
What counties are we preparing taxes for?
No limitation.
No limitation, so if somebody from Brunswick or Pender or
Yep.
Columbus, okay.
Yes, because some counties are still not, they simply don't have programs going.
Yeah.
Is there another question? Mary?
Then we come back to, if someone comes in with Wilmington residence, but they did half a year in another state.
Bill, would you touch on this?
Yeah, so if they're a part of your resident, first of all, you probably aren't gonna know that up front. If you happen to find that out, that's fine, you can deal with that. Just tell them that the preparer will talk to them about that when they start doing the taxes. Because We used to take a hard line and we only did North Carolina. We've loosened up on that. But it's really on a case-by-case basis because it depends on the complexity of the return, the complexity of the other state, all that. So we don't make promises about doing other state returns, but we can, in a minimum, do the federal return and the North Carolina part year return. But usually, you're not going to find that out at the intake process. But if you did, just tell them your preparer will talk to you about the part year. So,
What years are we doing?
For the first month, up until March 1st, we are only doing 2021. After March 1st, we will do prior years. And if they need to
back to
bring
18.
18, 19, 20, they need to bring everything together. We don't want to schedule 2 appointments. They want to get their 2021 done, and then they want to come back in early April to do, no. We want to do them all at once. So if they want more than 1 year, they can make an appointment for after March 1st.
And they only fill out one packet if they have 3 years or.
Well, that's another kind of
Unless
judgment
they're, I
call.
always say unless there's circumstances.
Generally,
change
we let them
significantly.
do it with just one, but if their circumstances change, they should do one separately. So for example, if they were married and then had a kid 1 year and didn't have a kid the other year, I'd say, you know, something significant like that, it would help to have a separate intake sheet for each year. But if basically their facts are generally the same, leave it with one. If they moved, that'd be another one where I'd say they should do a separate one.
There usually will have some envelopes, the big white envelopes on hand. And I think it's important right there. They'll just be blank envelopes, but you know, if we're doing 2019, 2020, to have them in separate envelopes. And usually people do give us a heads up on that.
I got a question in reference to this, separate years. Can it be a judgment call? So it's just, will they put one in each envelope, will it make it easy for the preparer? I mean, can it be a judgment call?
I love that you just said what would make it easy for the parents. That's just a great way to live.
Yeah, I would say if you have a question about that, and we're going to talk about this later, we're always going to have preparers that are available for you to come talk to. So in some cases, there's a particular preparer who's going to be helping a lot. Johnny, who will be out front. Johnny's a female. Johnny will be helping you, but you can always come to the back office if you have a question like that. So what I would say is if you get something like that, so they've got multiple years after March 1, you need to know if they need a separate intake sheet, come get one of the preparers and we'll help you figure that out.
That's the nice thing is that you always have this team that's, you know, 13 feet away, that they can come out and sometimes they're just tripping through different situations that it really is best to bring a preparer in. I mean, we know that you're not all tax preparers, so.
I'm gonna ask one more question. If, like, when I was here Friday last year, you weren't here on Friday, you took Fridays off. Is there some way you can leave a notice of what preparer to go to? Because we don't always know who's the most
In general,
knowledgeable.
yeah, I mean, those of you who've been here for a while, you know the preparers who've been here for a while. Go see those first. The newer people, if you go to ask them a question, they may say, I don't have a clue, go ask somebody else. They might get sent on. If there's somebody in the back office, I'd always start there.
Yeah.
So if I'm back there, or Jane's back there, or Johnny's back there, start there. If that doesn't work, then come in here and find somebody like Rob or Jane or somebody like that. It's perfect for those who've been here for a while. Otherwise, just ask anybody and they'll direct you to the right person.
And we'll be better about introducing at the beginning of the season preparers to your team. I think everything was just happened so quickly last year. It was such a whirlwind, but we will be good about that. We want you to feel comfortable asking the question. We don't want somebody leaving and then realizing, oh no, we missed something, and having to drag them back. So that's actually really great question. Also, obviously, like if they're on the phone with a client, go to the next preparer. Loretta was really helpful us too. John, I mean, the whole team. And generally happy to help. Let's see, so just going back, so folks will show up, we just want to keep them kind of spread out. Customer service, welcoming, you know, we're glad they're here, but at the same time, every once in a while you get a challenging client. And, you know, we're all volunteers. And I think it's, if you do get that challenging person, you can come in and If one of us is around, we're happy to step in usually, but you should feel fine saying, you know, this is all volunteers and hopefully you don't get anybody too nasty. For the most part, honestly, people are so grateful. They really are. And every once in a while, you do get that tricky person. And I think it's fine to just say how far you take it, but you
Yeah,
know,
my
we're all
advice would
volunteers and not to put them in their place, but just to remind them, this is a volunteer service. You're welcome to go elsewhere. And truly, if it's
yeah, I
a
mean,
very tough situation.
if you're not comfortable doing that, then don't do it. I mean, you know, if you don't mind being tough with people, that's great. You don't get a staff person to help you or somebody from the back office if they're uncomfortable, because we don't want to put a burden on you guys you're not comfortable with. So if somebody's being difficult, go find us, either Becky or Cully or Bridget to help you, or come get one of us in the back office.
Yeah, and one of us will be available each morning, and you can just ask them to stand aside, but, and we'll get to this, but it's usually over something really silly and very black and white, where it's like, they didn't bring their wife's driver's license, or they don't have social security, like it is clearly, there's no way we can do your taxes right now. You need to come back and make another appointment, and that's where, you know, I can understand, I mean, if people have taken the morning off from work, but they should be kicking themselves, not us. So hopefully those are very few and far between, but yes, we are willing to jump in if you're uncomfortable with that. And, you know, you can just say, sir, will you just wait a minute? And there were just, you know, every year there are going to be a few cases of those. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, it keeps it interesting, that's for sure. Mary.
Are we referring to last year's taxes in any way? If they say, well, I did my taxes here last year,
Okay,
we'll
we'll
have that information.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a minute. That's a good question. So just one other thing for the team. So probably there are going to be two people in here, one kind of runner who's making photocopies. It may happen at times if there are 3 people in here doing a take, we're going to have 3 tables set up ready to go. But it might be fine. We're moving along with just 1 intake. 1 person is outside. This is really important. It's important. And the nice thing is that those are glass doors, so you can see right in, but the line will be out this door. And there may be somebody who was with Joan, that person finished up with Joan, went to the restroom, and Joan has an empty table and there are 12 people standing out there, but it's always a good idea. My point is to be checking in, make sure that those tables are not empty. If the table is empty, bring in the next person. The whole thing is just moving it along. Ideally, it would be amazing if each client could be in front of Joan for only 4 minutes. I know that doesn't always happen, but we do, sometimes they're so organized, like I want to give them a gold star. And, you know, you look through and they already made copies of their driver's licenses, voided check, they're ready to go. They know how this process works. They are in and out. I mean, sometimes literally it's less than a minute. So, and they're really simple taxes. So that's great. Anyway, just kind of be cognizant, communicate with clients, you know, let them know typically, and this is also for the phone folks, typically somebody shouldn't have to wait out there for more than like 20 minutes. I mean, it was rare unless we really got a strange backup, but it really was, the whole point is to like move people along. If that's the case, if Cully had to jump in and help with intake, or I had to jump in, we'll do that. Like if we see, we are peeking at, you know, out those windows from down the hall as well. Yes, Sophia.
Okay, this paper has Monday, January 24th, and then when you were talking, you said the date was January 26th.
Oh, well, maybe,
No,
Yeah,
the 24th is when the
Tax.
packets are gonna be put out. And
Yeah,
the
tax.
The
25th,
online auction will go live Monday, January 24th. Is that true? That's what I want to.
I think we're kind of advertising the 25th, but our hope is to have it up and running on Monday, just kind of as a buffer day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
good catch. Thank you.
But we'll put that.
I have the computer set, like Becky said, we're, you know, since we're gonna test this out, we have it set up for Tuesday. So when the press release and everything's gonna say Tuesday, the 25th, but we know, yeah, we may end up going live on the 24th and having some staff, having you know, we may test it out a little bit, make sure it's working. But, good catch.
So also the person who's outside, I mean, it's sometimes, like, I'm the worst culprit, as probably most of you know. Like, I'll start talking about, oh, you're from Boston, I'm from New Hampshire, blah, 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 blah. Patriots. And then next week, really, I should have been spending that time welcoming everybody, making sure we have photo IDs. I mean, sometimes there really is, there are only a couple people out there and, to have a little conversation or whatever, it's welcoming. But really to make sure also the people in line have everything in their packet that they need. It would be a shame for them to have to stand in that line, get in here and realize they're missing something. So just make sure we have your driver's license. And again, the person outside, and we can kind of get into a flow with this. But I really think that because of the distance, the proximity, there almost has to be somebody constantly at this door, like in sight of who's coming in with the clipboard, making sure they're on the list, making sure they have an appointment. If there's time, and this is where it might be kind of a two-person deal, in whatever groove you can get into, but basically, I'm looking at people who are not even there. Tina might be out there asking for driver's licenses and social security cards. It would be so nice if by the time that person sits down with Joan, we have made a copy of what we need are photo IDs for the person who's the taxpayer. If they're filing joint, we need both photo IDs. No ifs, ands, or buts. And if they didn't bring the husband's driver's license or any form of photo ID, sadly, we ask them to rebook their appointment. Social security, proof of social security for everybody listed on the return dependents. This is crucial. And then if they are planning to do direct deposit or direct debit, we ask them for a copy of their check. We don't need their actual check, but, and some people will still give you their check, but I think ideally on one sheet of paper will be, the 2 photo IDs, 4 social security cards. If they have, and this is all in your package to bring home, but also if they have their social security statement, which if they get social security benefits, that should be in their packet anyway. And we'll show you an instance of that form. It's like a light pink. But if they have that, you don't need a social security card. But have on one page, and in some cases, the person will say, I always owe, I know I owe, you don't need a check from me, and that's fine. We will not accept deposit slips. Okay, it has to be a check, a voided check. If they bring in, every once in a while, somebody will bring in their bank information that was printed out from the bank, that's fine, right?
No, because it won't show the routing. Routing is
Okay.
fine on stage.
For some reason, there were a couple where they, yes, it has
That's a
been
general
bank
comment.
information.
Yeah, maybe there are some exceptions, but generally,
Voided.
your bank
There was
statement
a
doesn't
few
show you
that
routing.
said they didn't have a checking, or they don't have a check book, because they do everything
And that's
electronic.
fine. So they can pull it up on their phone and we can write it down from that.
Not ideal, though.
Yeah,
We
that's not.
we
We
really
like something
don't.
in writing because that's the biggest problem of, if we enter those numbers wrong, it goes to the wrong bank account. That's a nightmare to deal with.
I would almost
So,
have them write
We
it
gotta
down.
really be really careful that we get those numbers correct. So,
I would
and
almost
the
have-
reason the deposit slip doesn't work is that oftentimes the account number or the routing number is different on a deposit slip than it is on the check. So we need a check.
Yeah, so be it.
A lot of people do online banking, and then you say it's hard because you might miss a number. You can screenshot it and print it and actually send it to the person that needs it.
Yeah, the problem is we don't have a Wi-Fi printer here, so they have to bring that with them.
We need hard copies. Yeah, I really, for everybody, we really do need hard copies. And honestly, if they say, I don't have a check, but I have my account routing number memorized. But if they truly know it, I would have them write it down. Because then you can refer back to it and say, it's actually, this is exactly how you wrote it. I mean, not that it has to be a blame game, but it's kind of a big deal. So, but we ideally, voided check, social security cards, driver's license, again, if they have a statement, that's fine. If they come in, and this does happen, no matter how much on the phone we say to them, you need to have social security for everybody on the return. There's always, that day that someone's missing. I'm gonna make copies of social security. Oh,
We can
Yes.
understand.
yes, so thank you. And if you wanna jump in.
Yeah, I mean, jump in.
This is Bill's
This is
thing.
mine, so I'd like to jump in here, and we're gonna use this as a reference for the drop off. This is a document that I encourage you to go home and read and get fairly familiar with. Those of you who've been here before, you'll be familiar with this. But we've talked about some of these rules. I'm going to go through this because I think this is really helpful to understand exactly what it is that we need. Yes.
Thank you.
So, let me see the sheet before I ask the question. Okay, since I'm here with this training and I'm hearing there's a lot of questions and a lot of people have already done it. So the process, I'm trying to ask you right. Okay, this is basically a hands-on type of training. I will be following however the situation of those who've already done it. Is that what this training is entailing as well? We getting the paper information, but then how the process flows, will that be something that's being?
We're going to talk through. We're going to talk through that.
Okay.
And the first day you come, feel free, if you're not familiar with the process, if you're new, let somebody walk you through the process.
Okay,
So
that's what
either
I-
a fellow
Yes.
volunteer who's experienced can walk you through it. One of the staff people can, one of the preparers in the back office can. You know, we'll help you that first day to understand the process. So let's go through
Yes,
this.
I love that question though, because I can see how it'll be a little intimidating.
Yeah.
We're sitting up, but for that first week, I anticipate, and I'm just think part of school with this, Bridget, I mean, it's half of this room has done this. So you will have somebody to go to, but I envision kind of not standing over you, but kind of keeping an eye where you can turn around and if you have a question. And I have to say, after a couple of shifts of doing this, you're gonna feel extremely confident. You really will. I think you're gonna be fine, but especially your first shift, maybe your second shift. And there's always gonna be somebody for you to go to in that room or in this room. Tax repair wise, seasoned veterans who can help you. But don't think that you're in this alone. You're gonna have somebody.
No, I just want to know where it's going. It wasn't looking like it was going to be. I just breaking it out how we want to just more hands-on, like I want, like, for what I'm seeing now.
Yeah.
Following the person, whatever.
We'll
The
do that.
next question is that I'm going to, this is the sheet that, this is our checkoff list? Okay.
Okay,
That's a
so-
tough list for the
And so there are several things in your packet that you'll see are, and I encourage you to read through the documents in the packet as well. That's what the taxpayer is going to get. And, you know, people don't read. If they would read, this would be a really easy process and we wouldn't have to struggle with this. The problem is people don't read this stuff. But we've told them exactly what they need to bring. We've given them a checklist that they can fill out. They still don't pay attention. So that's the problem, is that you then have to step in and basically tell them, okay, you forgot this and this and this, I got to come back. So let's go through this process. Photo ID, we've already talked about this. Taxpayers have to have a photo ID. That's the person, the people who are signing the return. So that's a single person, that's their photo ID. If it's a married filing joint return where they're both going to sign the return, you got to have a photo ID for both spouses. So if they show up, they say, yeah, I'm filing a return with my spouse, they don't have the spouse's ID, then we stop right there. We don't move past that point. Basically, you tell them, I'm sorry, but the instructions told you we need a photo ID for both. We send them away. That's why it's nice for the person outside to kind of be reiterating some of these primary points, because we want to catch it as early as we can to tell them, I'm sorry, you don't have what you need. You're going to have to make another appointment. Come back. So photo IDs for both taxpayers, we have to have that up front. We don't want to, part of the thing, let me explain it from our side on the hearing side, is that if we start letting packets back to the back that aren't ready to be prepared yet, that becomes a real headache for us, because now we have to track all this. This is already complicated enough for us tracking. I mean, it's a pretty daunting task every year to deal with all these envelopes, because we'll end up with hundreds of these envelopes at a time once we get really busy. That's a lot for us to keep track of. What we don't need is a bunch of packets that aren't ready to go. So that's why we need this stuff up front. So the photo IDs is one, and you see I put in caps a lot of times, no exceptions. So that's it. If we don't have a photo ID, they've got to come back for both spouses. It's a joint return. Next is proof of Social Security. That's either the Social Security card, a copy of the Social Security. Copies are always accepted. So driver's license, for example, if they bring a copy of their spouse's driver's license, that's perfectly fine. We can accept that. Social Security, we need either the card The SSA 1099, so for those of you who get Social Security, you know what that is. It's the pretty little form that's got little pink boxes on it. That has the full Social Security number on it. We use that as proof of Social Security. Or any other document from the Social Security Administration that's acceptable that has the full Social Security number on it. What in the past, and part of this is for those of you who've been here for a number of years, this process has changed over time. So as I said back this morning, forget everything you ever learned. This is a new process. So in the past, we made exceptions because they've been here before, so that the Social Security number was on last year's return. We would let them through the door. Those days are gone. They have to have Social Security numbers. Now, I just said there are no exceptions. There are exceptions, but we don't publicize that. So for example, we have one wonderful woman who comes in here every year. She's got 3 grandchildren that she's raising. Mom and dad are out of the picture. She can't get a Social Security card because who knows where they are. And Social Security won't give her the Social Security cards, but we've helped her for 5 years now. So we're not going to throw her out and say, oh, you don't have a Social Security card, you can't come in. But it's what we're trying to catch is everybody else, basically. So everybody else got to have a Social Security card. That's for both taxpayers if it's a joint return and any dependents that they want to claim. So the intake sheet, my God, oh, it's in there.
Yes.
Can I grab an intake sheet?
Yes. And also for the Social Security, I'm gonna make copies. I think it was helpful last year of, sorry, though. Just a printout of how to get your Social Security card. I mean,
Yeah.
typically, just so that we can hand it, say.
Because every year
"I'm
we
so
have people
sorry."
say, I've lost mine. We got to send them to Social Security to get a new one because you got to have proof of Social Security. This is the big fraud thing. That's the reason the IRS has really cracked down on photo IDs and Social Security because of all the fraud that's going on with people filing returns for other folks. The last thing we want is to participate in that fraud. That's why we want to make sure we've got the proper proof. This is the intake sheet that they have to fill out that the preparer uses to prepare the return. Down at the bottom of this, on the front page, it's asks you to list all the people who you live with, basically. Those are the people that if they're trying to claim them, and most people know what that means. They're trying to claim somebody on the return. We have to have Social Security cards for all those people as well. So the taxpayers up at the top of that page. And anybody who's listed at the bottom, if they want to try to claim a deduction for that person or credit for that person, they've got to provide a Social Security card for each one of those people. So that's a way you can check when they bring all the Social Security cards, pull out that intake sheet. And if somebody's name is on that list and you don't have a Social Security card, we can't help, or either they can say, oh, no, that's just mine. Because the question is actually worded kind of bizarrely. It says anybody you live with. So it could be your roommate that you live with, where you're not trying to claim them or anything. If that's the case, just put a little note saying not trying to claim or not claiming or something like that. So that we know that, okay, we don't need a Social Security card for that person because they're not trying to claim them in any way. Okay, direct deposit or direct debit, that's also on the intake sheet, but I'm not going to ask you to check this at intake because it takes too long. But there is a question on the third page about you want to do direct debit or direct deposit. If they said, yes, I want to do direct debit or direct deposit, which you can just ask them this, say, or we need to check. And again, the instructions on all the information tells them we need that. We've already talked about basically that's a check or some other proof of the routing number and account number. Just writing it down is not a good solution for that. There's a document called the 14446, which is a totally unreadable, lots of words. They can or cannot, or they don't have to read that. But what they do have to do is, in fact, we came up with this last year, which is a great idea. Basically, everything that's in yellow means they have to fill that out or sign it. The last page of that 14446, they have to fill out that last page and sign it. And if it's a joint return, both the husband and the wife have to sign, or spouses have to sign and fill it out.
And that's incredibly important for the phone people to reiterate that both of the filing, you guys ask every single client, is this a single, that's one of my first questions. Is it a single or a joint return? If it is joint, photo IDs for both need to sign the virtual taxpayer consent form, that yellow form.
So the purpose of this form, IRS just loves paper. This is basically the person consenting to do it in a virtual way. Back in the old days, when it was all face-to-face, they didn't have to sign anything like this because they were present through the whole thing. They got walked away with their tax documents. What this is basically saying is it's authorizing them to drop it off and acknowledging that we're now responsible for their tax documents, that they're accepting the fact that, okay, yeah, I don't have control of my tax documents anymore. The site has that, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the site doing it. Yes, ma'am.
So on the yellow page of the 14,446, they always get mixed up with the signature. This electronic signature and printed signature. What's the best way to tell them? But they're gonna, they're gonna do the printed.
It really doesn't. As long as they've signed it somewhere on that document, that's all I can.
That's what I.
That's a good call, though. We got a lot of
So,
questions
as
about it.
long as they filled out the top section, they print their name, put the last 4 digits of their social security number, put their date of birth, the date that they're signed it, and a telephone number. And if they want to do an email address, which we actually like having an email address, and then just sign it somewhere is all I care about.
And that is one for the person who's outside, photo ID, social security, both if filing joint, both of you signed that yellow virtual taxpayer consent. Better to catch it while they're outside than, because that is another hard line on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we
We need
were
them
not,
both to sign.
we're not permitted to take their documents without that being signed by all the taxpayers.
They can just rip it off and send it out.
Yeah, and so what you do actually in the intake process is we keep the yellow page and you give them back the white pages at drop off. So we have to keep the yellow page showing them that they've signed authorizing us. We give them back the white page, although that's not really incredibly important. I mean, if you forget that, that's not a big thing. It's just that we need to keep the yellow page for sure. The next is the intake sheet. So again, this is that 4-page thing. This is one that, again, we're not going to ask you to go through this in any detail. You guys who used to do face-to-face, you know, we actually used to look at this, and that's why if we do face-to-face, we're going to talk about training for that later. For now, all I want you to do is open it up and look, just make sure they fill it out. Because some people will come in, they fill out the first page, they didn't touch the inside. Well, that's not acceptable. They need to fill out all 3 of the first 3 pages. That last page, the consent, doesn't matter if they signed it, doesn't matter if they have or have not. I don't care about that. The preparer is going to explain this to them. So if they have a question about that, just say, the preparer will talk about that when they do the return. So don't worry about that last page. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm outside and I'm kind of screening people and they've got their ID, but they have not filled this thing out. Is there a place I can go sit them down
I love
and
you.
have them fill it out?
You're fabulous. That is going to happen probably once every day, maybe sometimes more. So what I would always do, and I think you guys as well, we'll have some clipboards. And they may have to go to the end of the line and sit here, or go out to your car and fill it out. They have to be back here before 11 o'clock. If they show up at 10:50, and that's the case, I would have to make another appointment.
Okay.
But if it's earlier and you think that there's time for them, again, a judgment thing, typically that may take, and sometimes it is, it's just the insights, like they never even cracked it. If there was more information there. So, but we do need it filled out. So if they can go and do that as effectively as possible and get back in line, and you'll remember them.
What about somebody that truly needs somebody to really walk through and help them fill it out?
We try to catch those early on, like in the phone call or maybe in the notes section, where it may be something where, and this is just as a side note, we're going to have people who have unique circumstances. They really do need help. They are completely overwhelmed. Every once in a while, you get somebody whose spouse passed away the year before and they have never done their tax. Like they've never had to handle anything. And you feel for them, you know? So we try to help them. And, you know, sometimes it may be that we set up a special appointment with Rob and he'll go and sit in a separate room, or if they're hard of hearing. And once in a while, there are very special cases where somebody calls in and cannot make that 9 to 11. That's where you're going to send them to me, and I'll make a special appointment just to meet that.
But we will assist them. Somebody will help them.
assist them.
So if they come in, they've got an appointment, but they haven't filled this thing out, that's going to be a bit of a problem. They're probably going to have to make another appointment. but we'll still get somebody to sit with them and help them fill out this sheet of paper. You know, this is, some of these questions they're not gonna understand, that's okay. As long as they filled out most of it, that's what I care about. So there may be individual questions where they don't get it, that's okay, we can deal with that. It's just, I don't wanna see these 2 pages be blank, certainly not the first page. be blank.
The biggest culprits are when they haven't signed that virtual taxpayer consent form. For that, if they're just single or both of them are sitting there, if they're joint, you can just have them sign it right at your table.
Yeah.
That's gonna take 10 seconds. You don't need to send them to the back of the line for that, but Bill's right. I mean, if you get one that has not, we can give them a clipboard, send them back out to their vehicle.
I just thought of something else too. There are situations where a parent asks, and I bring my 18-year-old's information in for him. And it is acceptable as long as they have the ID and the social security and everything that everybody else has. So somebody else can drop it off for them. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't encourage this.
That one has some issues with it, but in general, at least on the front end, if they have a copy of the ID and a copy of the social security card, that's acceptable for them to drop it off.
They're trying to get into for one of you.
So we are only
That
doing the
happens.
taxes for seniors.
No,
No.
we do for anybody here.
For anybody regardless of age.
Yeah, about 2/3 of our folks are seniors, the other third are non-senior clients.
So will we have then a list of the appointments with the names first thing in the morning? So like if I'm outside, I'm like, okay, I need my 9 o'clock people.
Yeah,
And that's Susie and Tom and.
yeah.
And if you
Okay.
see that Betty shows up and she's not till 10:30, that's where Betty might want to just go hang
Go to
out
the
or
back of
go
the
over
line.
to Ocean State or
Gotcha.
whatever.
Okay.
Questions?
Oh, yeah.
So if we tell them they need to make another appointment, where do we tell them, then just call?
We're
or-
gonna have little business cards, we're having them printed up. That we'll have outside, we have like this little table set up outside, kind of makeshift, but it works. That you can just hand them that card. And also, again, if they have no social security, they may start to cry. But we can, at least we're sending them away, but at least we're saying, call this number, put this in motion, you need to have a social security card, you know? But also, if it, for really any reason, there are people who will show up and have not even picked up their packet yet. So then you just need to make an appointment, the packets are over there.
Okay, so this is really important. So on the intake sheet at the top, and there's several other documents where like the 14446, they put a phone number. They're gonna put a phone number there. Because of the way the virtual process works, we have to interview, the preparer has to do an interview with the client, which we used to do face-to-face. Now they have to do that by phone. Same thing on, we always have 2 people look at every return. So somebody prepares the return, a different volunteer who's a more experienced volunteer or an experienced volunteer will do what we call quality review or quality control review of that return. They also have to call the taxpayer and go through everything with them. And John can tell you about the headaches we have with people who don't answer their phone. They say, yeah, I've got working voicemail. We call it, either it's never been set up or it's full. Well, then we can't get a hold of them. And so the process grinds to a halt at that point. So it's really important that they give us a good working number. And this year, we're going to do something different. You're going to have a phone in here. And we're going to ask you to call that phone while you're sitting down. Maybe their home phone, we're still going to ask you to call it. You know, they won't be able to answer. But we'll be able to hear, do they have working voicemail or not? Or their voicemail's full or whatever. So, but most people are going to give you a cell phone these days. You're going to call it, they're going to be right there. Tell them don't answer it because we want to see if it goes to voicemail and that your voicemail works. So that's one of the things is we're going to test it this year. The other is people have to understand you're going to be getting a call. And everybody these days loves to block all their calls and they won't answer the phone. If it's not a number they recognize, tell them for the next 10 days or until your return's done, you need to answer the phone. And in one of these things, this one probably, we tell you, well, we tell them, not seeing it in this one, but one of the other documents, it says we give them a password. So that when we call them, we do a check. First of all, we'll ask them, spell your last name, give me the last 4 digits of your social security number. So we're sure we're talking to the right person. They're also given a password, Senior Center VITA 2022.
I'm gonna
So-
pass this around.
Yeah, so if they call, I mean, we call them and they'll ask, so what's the password? So that they make sure that we're legitimate people talking to. So that's the way both sides check to make sure we're talking to the right person.
Yes. And just so that you know, this form that I'm about to pass around is different from the one you're looking at. You'll see I've written in red at the top. This is the sheet of paper. There'll be a stack on each intake table of these that you're going to hand to every client as they're getting up to leave your table, which is basically the instructions from here on out, including all of this phone rigmarole that Bill was talking about. It includes, we always point out, that's the passcode. You can always ask your tax preparer for the passcode. If you're ever questioning, they are who they say they are. But they should be introducing themselves as being from the VITA.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing is, this year, another new thing, which is great that folks here have been able to work out for us. All of these phones, people who are preparing from here, it's going to show up as, we're still not sure what it's going to have for the name. It just may say New Hanover County, it may say VITA Tax, who knows what. But it's going to have the same phone number. It's going to show the same phone number every time. So we're going to tell them in that document, here's the phone number you're likely to see. The only problem is we have a few preparers because of extenuating circumstances that are going to be preparing from home. So obviously when they call, it's not going to be from that number. And so we can't tell them absolutely positively it's going to be this number. For 90+% of the people, it's going to be that number. So that's another nice thing. When they've got their cell phone and we call them, they're going to see that pop up. So it's like, okay, you see that call on your phone, you better answer the phone. Because then you can imagine if they don't answer, we can't leave a message. We're going to try back. What we tell them is we're going to try 3 times. We'll try on 3 different days. If we can't get a hold of them, we're going to mail their stuff back to them. Because again, we just can't keep track of all this stuff and hang on to it for months. Last year, we had people that it took us a month to get a hold of them. We're not going to do that this year. If they don't answer their phone, they don't leave us a working voicemail. That's why it's nice to have email. I'll also send an email and say, we need you to answer your phone. Can you please call us and we'll set up a specific time to call you. So we go, I think, beyond what we should have to do to try to get hold of these people. But ultimately, we're going to pull the plug on this and we're going to send their stuff back to them. So it's just incredibly important when you're going through the intake with them to tell them how important it is to answer their phone. That they can't take their normal stance of, if I don't know the number, I'm not answering it. They need to answer their phone because we can't get the return prepared if they don't do that. Questions?
And the other thing is, we'll have a quick huddle, hopefully each morning around 8:45. That's the goal, or at least a few times a week, where there will be days that Bill will say, we have somehow completely almost caught up with the envelopes that were, that are ready to go. You can let people know they may even get a call today. I mean, that's so, or we may know it could be beginning of the season, really busy, it's probably going to be a few days, but we try to give you something so you can verbally let them know when to kind of expect a phone call. Typically, it's within 3 days. They'll get their first phone call. Within 5 days, they'll receive their second phone call. It doesn't always work out that way. I think there have been people who are like walking in their car and their phone rings. I mean, it's impressive. So we just try to communicate with people as well as we can. So we'll try to communicate each morning to you, or if there's kind of anything different or funky that going on that we've learned.
Just to tell you a little bit about our site. First of all, we are the largest single VITA site in North and South Carolina. We did over 2,500 returns last year. So we are a high volume site, more than any other in North and South Carolina. So we're going to be churning a lot of people through here. So that's why I told you I'm a detail guy. Process is really important when you're dealing with that kind of volume. Carolina Beach is a much more calm atmosphere. It's pretty laid back and they don't have the stress that we have. But that's why these processes are so important. It's because we are dealing with, we're averaging when we get busy, it takes a while to kind of build the pipeline. Once we get going, we're doing 45, 50 returns a day. So we're going to be churning through a lot of people really fast. At the beginning of the season, we tend to be really busy. Plus, it tends to kind of take us a while to kind of, as I say, build the pipeline to kind of get things flowing. So we'll be really busy at the beginning. March is always a slow time for us. Now, maybe a little busy right at the beginning when we start doing prior year returns and minute returns stuff. I always like to say it's because of the NCAA basketball tournament. That's when we, yeah. So that's always the slowest time for us. It's middle of March. And then there are lots of procrastinators in this world. They all show up in April. So April is crazy time around here. So the last couple of weeks will be really busy and we churn through. I mean, we were doing 60, 70 returns a day towards the end of the season when we got every preparer's place is full here and we are just cranking them out. Because for one thing, for the preparers is beginning of the season, we're all kind of slow because we haven't done it for a while. By the end of the season, boy, people fly through returns. So we can really process them. But again, that's why it's so critical that we can get a hold of the taxpayer right away. But that's why most of the time it's going to be a couple days before they hear. Once we get cranking, and if we're not that busy, they're going to hear the same day, and they may get the quality review the same day and come back the next day and pick up their return. That's how fast it can be. So.
And no appointments after April the 8th.
That's correct. So that's because we need time to basically prepare that backlog of returns. Now, I anticipate that we are, unless we get a new Greek letter in our life of a new variant, I expect we're going to go to face-to-face. We would still do face-to-face after that. But the drop-off has to stop a week in advance because we need that time to basically process all those returns, get them filed. Because the other thing about drop-off, which you're going to talk about in a second, is pickup. They got to come back and pick it up, and they have to sign the authorization for us to e-file. So not only do we have to prepare the return, get it reviewed, we have to give them time to get back here, pick it up, sign it. All that has to be done by Monday, April 18th. So that's why we need that week to basically get all that stuff done. We can give them a copy of the intake sheet if they want it. I don't think people generally will ask for that, but if they want to take a copy with them, you can make a copy for them. You're going to give them that senior center writer process handout.
There's going to be also a photocopier in that room, so that you know.
And then here's the thing that explains the process that you tell them, and it's basically what's in that document. Again, try to become familiar with the basic process and tell them that. Okay, you're going to expect a call within 3 business days from the preparer. They're going to go through the intake sheet and everything with you, make sure we've got everything we need. They'll prepare the return. Somebody else will call a few days later, who's the quality review person. They'll go back through all this stuff with you, and then you'll be told when you can come back, pick up the return, and then you'll need to come back and pick it up, and you'll need to sign and all that stuff. So this details all of that stuff. The other thing that I want to talk about pickup now, or
I just also want to go back to Mary, I think that was the comment. We do ask that they bring a copy of last year's tax return. A lot of times, I mean, in some cases, they'll say, I've never filed my taxes. Obviously, we're not going to get to bring last year's tax return, but I always just say it's so nice for our taxpayers to have it right there for, reference. If we've done their taxes in the past, yes, they're in our system, but we really still appreciate that. And this is along with you guys, a copy of last year's tax return. We don't need the last 7 years tax return. But it's amazing. Some people will show up with like their filing cabinet,
And if they don't have the tax return, that's not one of those things where it's like you get turned away. That's a nice to have for us, and we tell them that. But if they don't have a copy of the tax return, we don't send them away.
Yeah, and all the receipts and everything too come.
Oh, people bring boxes of receipts and stuff. It's really.
Can I ask one,
Oh,
for you
Bridget,
to reiterate one more thing before we move on?
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
about the phone call.
Yep.
For intake. We get up right in the middle of the interview with them, go and make that phone call and come back. Is this correct?
That is correct.
We're gonna have the phones.
at the table for
at the
you.
table for you.
So the way the desks in this room are going to be situated is that you're going to have your empty table to help with your intake process, and you'll have a telephone, just like you see at these workstations. It will just be at the desk. And basically, we'll get in the habit of it, but you can just hit speakerphone, dial the number real quick, And then we're gonna kind of work it out because we haven't done this before. But our hope is that it can help expedite and, alleviate any of the issues that we've been having. If we find out it's slowing everything down, I mean, we're gonna talk through it, but that's kind of the hope. It'll be right at your desk, put them on speakerphone, it picked up, you can hear a voicemail, hang up, okay, you're free to go. It's probably gonna be like the last thing you do too. Because you don't want, like you said, you don't wanna interrupt your process. You wanna make sure all that other stuff is in order. Last thing we're gonna do is check your phone. Does that help?
And you can always say, last year, it truly was our biggest challenge is getting through the client. We want to be able to do your taxes, as efficiently as possible. So usually they're pretty understanding about it. They're going to get a call anyway. And the nice thing is that if that number pops up on your cell phone, save it in your phone. It's the number, put VITA, and then you're expecting it.
I think Bridget had a
Oh, Bridget
question.
had a question.
Well, is there anything unusual that we should be looking for checks from the government that people will be,
For what from the government?
like checks that they receive from the government, anything special for 2021?
Well, the packet talks about some of that stuff. There are two things that they're supposed to get a letter from the IRS in January. One is the third round of the stimulus payments that you all should have gotten. So that third round that came through, people won't remember now because it's been so long. That came like in March, April, May last year. They're supposed to get a letter that details how much they got. So it's good if they bring that. It's not absolutely required, but another government. The other big one this year that's new is this thing called Advanced Child Tax Credit, which presumably none of you are familiar with, but it deals with people who have kids under the age of 18. They got, for the last 6 months of the year, basically an advance payment on their child tax credit for 2021. We have to reconcile that on the tax return. So it's very similar to the stimulus payment that we have to reconcile on the tax return. They're also going to get a letter from the IRS that says how much they got and some other information that we need for the return. So that one actually is really important. Again, the information that's in the packet where we tell them what we need, it's clear that we need both of those things in the child tax credit when it's like, without this information, we cannot do your return. So hopefully they're gonna, again, if everybody read this stuff, it would make it a whole lot easier. If they show up, you're not gonna catch that at intake because we're not asking you to catch that. Instead, the preparer's gonna call them and find out, oh, you've got a 5-year-old kid. Did you get the letter? And they say, oh yeah, I threw it away. It's like, everything grinds to a halt because we need that letter to complete the return. Now, sometimes we can kind of figure it out, but it just encumbers the process significantly.
Okay, thank you.
You have a question?
Several.
Okay.
As far as making copies, make a copy of the IDs, are we keeping the original tax documents or are we making a
Yes.
copy of them?
No, we
We're
keep
keeping the
everything.
original. If they wanted a copy, they should have made a copy before they came.
We'll make a copy for it if they need it. If they say, I'd like a copy, you're welcome to make it, but otherwise we keep all of it.
Same with the previous year tax return.
Yes, we
We'll
keep it all.
that.
Yeah.
We'll
Now,
make a
what-
copy if they want.
Yes, we would do that. I don't think anybody's ever requested that, but we would. But let me say about last year's tax return. People will come back with a huge file folder with all their receipts and all. All we need is the actual tax return.
Yes.
So you'll get familiar with this very quickly once you start doing pickup. But they're gonna have a packet that's stapled together that's gonna have on the front page, at least this is the way we do it, it's gonna have their name and their address and stuff. You're gonna get used to seeing, that's the tax packet. It's got all the forms that were filed with the IRS and all that. That's what we need. We don't need all their receipts and their W-2s and all that
State.
stuff. We just want the return itself. So if they bring in last year's envelope, which that's what most of them will do, they'll just bring in the one that says 2020 on it, pull out the tax return, give them back all the rest of this stuff. So because again, the more paper we have, the more paper we have to keep track of. So
Typically,
We
I
only
mean, I don't
want-
know if you're asking if they want their full file copy.
We just need the tax returns and we'll make a copy. to give
we'll
back
make a
to
copy
them.
if they want.
So are these the two things that as intake people, these are two checklists as we're sitting at the table going through?
Okay, that blue one, you do not need to go through that. That is for the taxpayer. That's for the taxpayer to basically make sure, yeah, I'm coming with everything I need.
Okay.
The yellow one, there are a couple of, so they gotta do the intake sheet, this thing. They have to do the intake sheet addendum, which is a separate yellow page. That's basically additional questions that we ask, including this asks about that advanced child tax credit and the stimulus check information. And then they have to sign that yellow page, the 14446. So those are the three things. That's what you're checking for. So when they come to drop off the packet, you're making sure they filled out the intake sheet, they filled out the intake sheet addendum, they signed the 14446, and then all the other things that we've talked about. Those are the three documents that they have to have completed for us to start the return.
Doris has a question.
Okay, I have a question. Joint filing, okay. The husband comes in and he says, I'm here, I'm gonna sign it. Can we do the same as we did last year, let him sign it and the wife has to come back?
We're gonna talk about that in a minute. So that's the pickup process. But hold that question. I'll come back to that in a minute. That's- Right now, we're on the front end of the process. I'm gonna go to the back end of the
Oh,
process.
okay.
in a minute. Yeah,
Sorry.
For those of you who are doing intake, for those of you, if they made an appointment by phone and they already have the packet, we usually say, if you have a packet in front of you, pull off the blue sheet and the 3-page, 4-page yellow sheet. Let's go over it together. So we do a mini intake over the phone to see, to try to get a feeling for whether they have all their stuff together yet or not, to make it a little easier.
Any other questions on the intake process? And again, we have thrown a lot of information at you, I've given you stuff to read.
It is a ton of
Definitely
information. I can see you laughing.
The key is the first time you do it, we'll walk you through the process and you'll see somebody else do it. And then you'll get very comfortable with it very quickly. So it's a little intimidating up front. What I always tell preparers about that first day, you're gonna be deer in the headlights. But after that, it gets really easy. So just understand that that's just the way it's gonna flow. Okay, so what about pickup? So it's that when we are finished with the return, so the quality review person has done their thing, they call the taxpayer. They'll go through the intake sheet again with them. They'll also go through the return with them and tell them, here's the final answer, because all, as you probably are all familiar with yourself, they could care less what's on the return. All they want to know is, do I owe money or am I getting a refund? And how much of the rest of it is kind of in one ear, out the other. Kind of thing. But so we'll still go through the return with them to kind of tell them the results. And then we tell them, come back, starting tomorrow, you can come back any day, Monday through Friday, between 11 and 12, to pick up the return. No appointments necessary for that. They just come anytime between 11 and 12 to pick up the returns. That's where you guys come back into the process again. So taxpayers show up. First of all, once again, if it's a joint return, we have to have both spouses sign this form. There's a form that's called the 8879. We put the packet together for you, so you'll see the 8879 will be right on the top. That's the form that they have to sign that authorizes us to e-file the return. It's also where they're basically signing under penalty of perjury that they've told the IRS the truth. And so it's just like the old days where you're signing the tax return. This is the alternative way of signing it, which you're telling the IRS, I told you the truth, and it's authorizing us to do the e-file. We have to have signatures by both spouses on that. If only one spouse shows up, what we ask is, there are always exceptions, but we try to avoid the exceptions. We ask that the other spouse come back and sign. So if one of them shows up, we'll say, okay, you can go ahead and sign, but your spouse needs to come back here to sign the 8879. And we do not release the packet until we have both signatures. So we keep the packet because we can't e-file the return. So it's kind of the way to keep control of the process. So we'll keep the packet until the spouse returns. Now, there are some situations, there are always exceptions to every rule. We don't advertise the exception. But for example, if the spouse is in an assisted living facility, obviously in that situation, we'll give them the 8879 to take to the spouse to sign and bring it back to us. There are also people where the spouse isn't able to sign anymore. They'll typically have a power of attorney, but not always. We'll deal with that as well. So just know that there is some flexibility, but we don't advertise that flexibility. Instead, we want both spouses to come here to sign that document. Yeah.
You need to keep a copy if they do have power of attorney.
Yes, we have to have a printed copy. So if they sign under a power of attorney, we have to have a copy of that power of attorney. So if they come in and say, yeah, I've got it, I'm signing under power of attorney, which the preparer or quality review person should have cleared that already with them. But in case they don't, if they say, I'm signing under a power of attorney, say, we need a copy of the power of attorney, we actually have to make a copy and we have to send it to the IRS. So that's an absolute requirement to have that power of attorney. Yes, ma'am.
We living in a time that my spouse could be in a hospital with COVID.
Yep.
What do you do?
Okay, so again, if that's the situation, we would give you the 8879 to take to the spouse to sign. If you're able to get into the hospital to see your spouse, hopefully you are. If you're not, you know, the problem is we can't e-file the return without both spouses having consented. So it's really impossible for us to move forward at that point. What we would do is we're going to hold it and hopes that at some point they're going to be able to get the spouse's signature. If that spouse is incapacitated, so that they're, you know, God forbid, in a coma or something like that, we would work with them in that situation. So there, again, we don't advertise the exceptions, but if you hit a situation like that, they say, hey, my spouse is in the hospital, they're not able to sign, come get one of us in the back office to come help you with that. Yes, sir.
Supposing somebody doesn't have the spouse with them and said, I don't want to e-file now. And they just do that and keep on going?
Okay, so in that situation, what we have to do is then print the return and they can file a paper copy. That is permissible for us to do that. I don't like doing it, but if that's what they insist on, that they just want a paper copy to file, we'll print out a paper copy for them and give it to them, and then they can take it and deal with it. But that's not something, printing out that paper copy takes time. So that's one where if they come to you and say, forget it, I just want a paper copy, tell them to come back tomorrow and get a paper copy. Instead
Yeah,
of
but I
having
would say
to-
it's an alternative,
It is an alternative.
in
Yes.
case somebody's traveling and can't get back or something.
Okay, yeah, if they're traveling, that would be an example of one where, yeah, you could say, we'll just give you a paper copy. If they're getting a refund though, and they file a paper copy, good luck seeing that
No,
refund.
very good.
I promise they might get it by Christmas if they're lucky.
I always get it with the 30 days.
Not this year, I guarantee you. The IRS is already set. They still have 6.8 million returns from 2020 that they have not processed yet.
Right.
So they're already sending out all this stuff saying, this is going to be a horrible tax year. So let's be prepared. So anything you have to do in paper is usually a really bad. Okay, other questions? Or I'm going to go on with the pickup process. So the pickup process, when they come, got to see picture ID again. And we'd like to see picture ID for both spouses. So whoever comes to sign, we need to see a picture ID, make sure they are who they say they are, because obviously we don't give somebody else their packet. Now, there will be situations where somebody says, I'm picking up somebody else's packet. They need to have arranged that up front with us so that we're comfortable doing that. We're just not going to let somebody walk in off the street and say, oh, I'm picking up Joe Smith's packet form. It's like, sorry, that ain't happening. You know, so we need some kind of prior authorization so that we know that that's acceptable for us to do that.
And in those cases, we always ask for the taxpayer's driver's license, photo ID, and the person. And we know what, you know, usually there's a note in there. Mrs.
Yeah.
Mullins is picking up her son John's, but we see both photo IDs.
Yeah.
And also just in general, as we said, for the 11 to 12 o'clock hour. So basically it's a shift of the whole, for those that are new. We wheel in this big cabinet that has all of the envelopes, so that'll be right at your disposal in here. But we're going from intake to pickup, so you're done with intake at this point. We're not doing what we've been talking about all morning.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just a shift. That cabinet will be right there, and we'll work this out. And you'll kind of learn on the job, but the first day that we do this. But like Bill said, we're going to look at the photo IDs. You know, there's a couple there. They both hand us their IDs. We actually, the volunteer will take the ID and compare it against the envelope to make sure they're picking up the correct envelope, hand it to them, and then still there's also the double checking the last 4 digits of the social.
Then you ask the last 4 digits of the social security.
Yeah, so on the envelope, I didn't cover this, this back at the beginning, when the at drop off, we ask you to do it if you have time. If you're just crazy busy, we'll handle it in the back. But we ask you to put the taxpayer's last name and first name in that order, last name, first name, and the last 4 digits of their social security number, which you can get off the social security card. You just made a copy of it or off their social security statement. That's kind of the way we file everything and keep track of it, with that last name, first name, last 4 of the social security number. When you come to pick up the return, when they come to pick up the return, ask them for the last 4 of their social security number, because we check that and make sure, okay, yeah, you've got photo ID, which usually that should be good enough, but we also ask for the last 4 of the social, just to make sure that we're giving the right packet to the right person.
And this is crazy, with 2,500 clients over the season. Last year, there were a couple that had the same name.
Yeah.
So it
Gotta
really
be
is
really
important.
Yeah. So you'll get the packet, they'll show you ID, you'll confirm they're the right person, you'll pull the packet for them. Then you're gonna open the packet, and things are gonna hopefully be in the right order in the packet. For one thing, on the front of the packet, it's gonna say, hopefully in the top right, if there are things like estimated tax vouchers. So, because some people want estimated tax vouchers, it'll tell you that, so that when you open the packet, you'll see that those estimated tax vouchers are in there. That's for 2022. So that's basically the forms they have to send in with their quarterly estimated tax payments. Some taxpayers ask for that, so we'll put that there. We'll also put, trying to think of what else we do there. Direct deposit.
Yes, it's whether federal and state, and whether they're, and you usually put the amount.
Some people put the amount, some people don't.
Okay.
But we'll have some information at the top right that'll help you understand. For example, there are a couple of things that we kind of get hung up on. One is if they want to do direct deposit and they've not previously provided a check to us, which sometimes people change their mind after the fact or something. If they say they want to do direct deposit, you will see a warning on here. It'll either be in that top right corner, or I'll stick a yellow sticky on it or something that'll say, need a copy of the check to do the direct deposit. Because we actually have to enter that in a tax return. So we can't actually print off their tax return stuff until we've got that information. But we don't make them come back twice. So we tell them, come in, bring your check with you, and then we'll input that and we'll print off the tax return form while they wait here. Another one that occasionally happens, and again, we'll put a sticky on it to let you know that. This form that's on the back of the intake sheet, it's a consent form. Basically, what this is basically saying is if they sign this, then if they come back here every year, we already have their system, their information in our system, their like personal information and stuff like that. If they sign this, any VITA site in the country could pull up their information, which for our population is not a big thing. Most people don't sign this. I do a lot of training for military sites like Camp Lejeune. That's a big thing there because they're moving around all the time. And so they want to sign this so that the next base that they're stationed at, all they gotta do is put in their social security number and there all their information pulls up. If they want to sign this and they haven't already signed it, we'll put a sticky on there saying they need to sign the 14446. Okay, so again, look at the front of the envelope first to kind of see what things we're telling you on that. You'll open up the envelope. On top will be typically be the 8879 that they have to sign. And you'll see that there are actually 2 of them. There's one on the top of the return. There's one that's loose. They need to sign both of those. We keep the loose one. So that's what we keep for our records to show that they've authorized us to e-file. Again, the first day, trust me, when we go through this process, you'll get comfortable with it very quickly. But we keep one copy. We give them back the other copy because it's actually attached to their tax return. So we keep that, but basically everything else goes back to them. So that packet, all the stuff they brought in, including their intake sheet and addendum and all that stuff, at the end of the process, they get that all back, plus a copy of their tax return. So the only thing that we keep coming out of this process is that copy of the 8879. And you'll see also the one that's the single page that we keep will have, like a W-2 where you have these multiple copies. We'll keep one of those copies sometimes, not all the time. You don't need to worry about why we do, but it'll be attached to that. We keep all that stuff. once the return has been e-filed and been accepted by federal and state, we then shred all that information. So that's the only sensitive data that we keep after the fact, but then we shred it once it's all been.
And typically you e-file that day.
We e-file that same day. So whatever day they sign the 8879, we'll collect all those, alphabetize them, and then we'll e-file them all that day. So their return will be e-filed the same day that they sign that 8879. But if they don't come back to pick up their return, we're not allowed to e-file their return. So that's one of the things that's really important in this process. The preparers and the quality review people harp on that with them to say, you've got to come back and sign this, because if you don't sign it, we're not done yet. Until you've done that, we can't file this return.
And sometimes even, you know, Mrs. Smith will show up. She and her husband just have a plan. They both work. She'll sign it. And it's not even that she's going to take the 8879 home with her. She's like, I just want to leave everything here. Bob will be here tomorrow. He'll come in and sign it. That's perfectly fine. We still are retaining everything. But once Bob comes in and signs it, that's when we can give everything to Bob. Always checking photo IDs. Here's the other interesting thing about pickup. And I hope that preparers make this kind clear. So 11 to 12 o'clock, because no appointment is necessary, first of all, the tax preparer hopefully is going to say to the client, your taxes are done, but we'd like you to give it at least a day or two before you come in. Some people don't hear that, and they're driving past McDonald's and they drive right over here, and we do not have the, it's not ready. So it may happen, they say, well, I just got a call, you can say, we need you to come back tomorrow, it's not ready yet. But hopefully it will be conveyed to the client that, you know, you can come anytime after tomorrow to pick up your taxes. Some days there will be 3 people that show up between 11 and 12, and we've got 4 of us twiddling our thumbs here. Other days there'll be 38 people. It is completely unpredictable. I think we typically, the tax preparer, you know, you might have to wait a little while. You know, typically nobody has to wait more than 20, 25 minutes. But if there's a line, it's their choice. They can always come back tomorrow. But it has happened that there is a long line out that door. Again, like Bill said, once we get into a groove and do this the first day, you'll all see how it works. But pickups move a lot quicker, move along a lot quicker than intake does. So even though it looks like a long line, it's not as intimidating. It really does typically move along pretty quickly.
It's a separate line.
There shouldn't be.
At different times.
9 to 11 is drop-offs by appointment.
11,
And
12.
so 11 to 12. So we might have some people for pickup who get here at 10:30 and we say, we're not doing pickups yet, not till 11 o'clock. Here's the other thing is that occasionally, just so that you're aware, there will be that person who truly just cannot make it between 11 and noon time, in which case the tax preparer will give them one of our phone numbers and we'll make a special case. But yeah, typically 11 to 12.
Hold on a second, let me talk about a couple of things then we'll talk. One of the pages in there was this thing, the intake checklist was attached to one of the documents that you have. That's going to be laminated and put on the intake desk. So that's kind of your quick guide. We'll do another one for the pickup process. I didn't think about doing that one before, but we'll do one for that also. So that'll be your cheat sheet. Or, okay, because what was I supposed to do again? So we'll do a little one-page cheat sheet for you on pickup as well. So that'll be on the thing. The other thing I wanted to point out is what I just handed you. The other thing that we asked you to do in the pickup process is you'll actually, because you're pulling out all the documents anyway, we're going to ask you to open it to the front of the tax returns. So the one so I told you there were 2 copies of the 8879, the loose one, and then the other one is attached to the whole tax return. You just have to turn a few pages into that. You'll come to the tax return. What we ask the taxpayer to do is to check where I did red boxes for you. So there are 3 places we're going to ask the taxpayer to look that over for us, because misspelled last names is a huge problem for us. Some people have really complicated last spelling of names. The other is we have a lot of problems with double last names or hyphenated names not getting caught. So that's why we ask them to check this over. Make sure when it says last name, that's truly their full last name. Checking the addresses, also checking social security numbers, and then same thing for the dependents. Did we get the name spelled correctly? Does it have the correct social security number and correct relationship? And then on the back page of the return is if they've given us information for direct deposit, direct debit. We asked them to once again confirm that we got those numbers correct, because again, that one's one that if that gets messed up, it's a big problem. So we'll ask them to confirm those things. I was surprised last year, we actually caught quite a few where we had addresses that weren't quite right, or 'cause sometimes people move around and we don't end up having the right address on there, or misspellings in the name, things like that. So this is kind of our final check. It's also kind of putting a little responsibility on the taxpayer to say, okay, yes, you've got all this right. So then when it's wrong, we can say, well, you did check that, right? But anyway, so that's just another part of that pickup process. Okay, so questions on the pickup process? Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes people have, like two last names,
Yes,
they have a hyphen.
sometimes they have a
Some of
hyphen.
them even don't have none, it just look like one name,
I know.
that's scary.
Trust me, we deal with that all the time because the problem is when we e-file the return, the IRS system checks the first 5 letters of their last name. So if they have a double last name and we put, so if it's John Smith Jones and Smith Jones is their last name, if we put Jones, that return's going to reject because it's going to say that's not the last name. The last name starts with S-M-I-T-H. So that's why we got to make sure we get that right. We try to catch that through the preparation process. The nice thing is the newer Social Security cards, they're actually now putting the last name on a separate line. So
Yeah.
those are easy to see. The
Yeah.
problem is most of our population are not going to have Social Security cards look like that. But so for some people, we can now catch that. But that's why, again, showing them this, make sure, okay, tell me, this is name is correct, if that's your last name, because again, that's what the IRS's system is checking.
When they get kicked out the system because they gave you the wrong information, first thing they say, oh, I meant to tell you.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah, I
don't
forgot
get
about
all of this.
that. Yeah, absolutely. So what happens then is then we have to call it back and figure out what was wrong with the return, and then we have to fix it, and then we have to re-file.
Then they
So
wonder
again, that
why
just
you
takes,
taking so long.
that takes time, and given our volume, we try to avoid all those that we can, but there are inevitably some of those are gonna happen. Any other questions on pickup? Okay, sorry that's taken so long, but.
I think we had you here till noon, right? And we have food in the other room, so, that's top priority. And all I can smell is zucchini bread over there. So, I'm gonna go on my diet in 2023. So